So Lent occupies what I'd like to call a Kairos time between the end of winter and the beginning of spring. And so that time of year, everything this week vacillates between cold and damp and rainy and sometime in the past snowy and warm and sunny, tempting us with the latter, but capriciously plunging us back into the former after we've been lulled by the sun and the appearance of the crocuses and daffodils. So I don't know about you all, but by March, I am really tired of the gray and winter palette. And I'm tired of the muddy earth that somehow always gets tracked into the house, especially after you just vacuumed. So the lifeless grays and browns of Earth's calendar fits very neatly into the season of Lent. Our psyches are supposed to be gray and bleak as we think and pray about Jesus's upcoming torture and execution that we read about during Holy Week. And we're supposed to reflect upon and atone for our sins and fast and pray, which is not a bad idea if we do it all in a constructive and healthy manner. Because transformation really does require the excising of useless things that distract us. And the lives of our families, indeed, even the life of the world, ultimately depends upon each of us remaking ourselves into kinder and more loving people. Both the weather and the rhythm of daily life have inspired the liturgical seasons of all faiths, obviously including Christianity. Lent began in the Northern Hemisphere when winter stayed around for a long time before global warming. And all of life depended upon a bountiful harvest, and even that began to run out by the end of March. Making it through the winter into spring consumed the lives of our ancestors. And by Easter, they were probably bare to the bone, both physically and spiritually. So waiting for the fatted calf and the fatted lamb, those were not metaphors. Those were the God's honest truth. So unfortunately, the times in which we live contribute to that bare bones feeling. I've read several articles over the course of the last couple months about the increasing sense of despair that American girls are feeling. And one of my friends attended her college-age granddaughter's choir concert last week, and she commented upon the gloomy and sad songs that these girls on the cusp of their lives had chosen to sing for a concert. And the despair expressed by the music was so palpable that she said she actually had to bow her head because of the heaviness and the pain that they expressed. And so if we look around us, my friends, it is not surprising that our young people are feeling such despair. We might even feel it ourselves as we reflect upon the tragic wars in Gaza and the Ukraine and the assault on women and LGBTQ+ rights by legislators and religious leaders. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I ask myself, or frequently I ask myself, what can happen next? And as soon as I ask that question, I back away from it immediately because I don't want to go anywhere near the answer. So words, as you all know, are a poor substitute for what we are actually feeling. Poetry and idioms do a far better job expressing our emotion. As we contemplate the wars in Gaza and Ukraine and the execution of Alexei Navalny, some of us might use phrases and words to more accurately express our feelings. So I know personally that I am broken up by the deaths I see on the nightly news. It makes me feel beside myself. The news that 8 teenage students were gunned down at a bus stop in Philadelphia after school on Thursday broke my heart. And so as I was preparing this homily, I thought back to the Guess Who song, those of us who are old enough to remember, She's Come Undone. It might express some of the despair that we feel. And it goes like this. She's come undone, and she didn't know what she was headed for. It was too late. All she got were lies. She's lost the sun by the time she realized she's come undone. And so despair is that feeling that can undo us inch by inch and cell by cell. Becoming undone reduces us to our dry and bare and dusty bones. They've seen in our reading from Ezechiel, where all is gray and brown and dry and melancholy. And we've probably all been there for varying amounts of time. And believe me, as you all know, it's not a fun place to be. One of my friends, who thankfully emerged after a very deep depression, told me that the despair that she once felt is now during her depression, is now so completely foreign to her that she can't even reimagine how she felt during those times. And Ezekiel is not the only prophet to paint a portrait of despair. The prophet Isaiah bemoaned the lack of peace and justice in the land where he lived, and he described it thus: "We wait for light, and lo, there is darkness. For brightness, but we walk in gloom. We wait for justice, but there is none. For salvation, but it is far from us. Truth stumbles in the public square. Truth is lacking, and whoever turns from evil is despoiled." And Jesus, my friends, shared Isaiah's discomfiture with his particular time. He too saw truth stumble as the elite members of his nation cut deals with the occupying Romans. He probably knew people who were thrown off their lands as the occupiers enclosed familiar lands into their great estates. And Jesus knew what the Romans did to anyone who challenged their authority. So Jesus, as we know, is one of the thousands that the Romans would crucify. And we see him unravel as his ministry progressed. He often despaired of the thick-headedness of his followers. He got angry with merchants for hawking wares in the temple. He saw the enmity between his male disciples and Mary Magdalene, his tower of strength. He would see one of his followers betray him and another deny him. And he would see the rest run away and ditch him. He is described as crying out on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" as tens of millions of victims have done before and after him. Thus, Jesus, our Emmanuel, God with us, as one of us, was like the millions of victims who lost their lives because of war and injustice. He, like his fellow sufferers, was reduced to the bare bones. In other words, he came undone. On my way to work before I retired, I used to drive across the bridge that spanned a deep valley formed by the Wissahickon Creek in Northwest Philadelphia. Huge stands of trees stood along both sides of the bridge. And the change in seasons was always a wonder. It was poetry. I even had the words to describe it, especially as spring approached. For months, the trees just poked their bare black branches into the sky. Then one day, suddenly, usually in late March, the brown would just seem to be a little softer, and I would just see a little hint of green. Every day, the green would spread, and it would run along from branch to branch like a joyous messenger announcing, "Spring is here," until the entire forest erupted into a riot of green by late April. When we lift our eyes up into the hills, when our bones are dry and bare and very sad, we need to search for that glimmer of green, the vision of hope, as Jesus always did. Despite the dry, dead bones that often blocked his message, Jesus was still able to talk to tax collectors like Zacchaeus. He could still tell the story of the prodigal son and the Good Samaritan. He regularly fed everyone without ever once asking if they were worthy. And he never, ever believed that God's arm was too short to save or to forgive. Despite being laid open, wide open, and defenseless with the certainty that he would be executed in Jerusalem like all the prophets before him, despite the fact of being bare to the very bone, he still could believe in justice and mercy when none seemed visible. And my friends, we should as well. The good news, because there's always good news, is there are always people like Jesus who continue to put flesh upon even the barest of bones. People who have come undone, completely undone, and yet were able to knit themselves back together again. People who have dreamt it all and risked it all, and who, despite the painful slings and arrows of sometimes grievous misfortune, they chose to leave behind only love and kindness. And so, my friends, never lose heart. Stand with a full heart and outstretched arms. Be vulnerable and bare your heart and your soul. Let the fire of mercy and justice surround you like the flames of Pentecost, like the green that eventually grips the trees with the abundance of springtime. Let the fire of your love shine like a lantern so that sparks fly and ignite other lanterns of gladness, and the darkness is dispelled. Blessed be the fire. Blessed be the light that illuminates our way to resurrection.